Well, we're right at the top of the hour, and I think we're going to get started. Again, this is Steve Case from Electrorent, and we're going to get started on our webinar this morning with some asset management strategies for increasing your ROI. And just before we get started, I'm going to introduce our presenter this morning, which is Chris Manning. He's a business development manager for Electrorent for some years, and he's got a degree in electrical engineering and an MBA, and has been doing this asset management for Electrorent for a while now. And I'm the moderator, Steve Case. I'm just a test equipment guy. Been doing all kinds of things for some years. And good morning, Chris.
Yeah, good morning, Steve.
How's it going?
It's going well, thanks. How are you?
Very good. And normally we talk about test equipment and locations and what we have, but Chris is going to have some of that in his presentation. So Chris, I'm just going to pass it right over to you and we'll just get going and get started. So hang on a second. Let's get you as the presenter here.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for your time and attention today. I really appreciate it. Today, we're going to be talking about asset management strategies. And so just to start off, let's talk a little bit about why companies with test assets care right now, right? And so there are both macro trends in industry and also that impact companies using test equipment, and also challenges at the organizational level. Some examples of business trends that are receiving a lot of focus and attention right now include Six Sigma. And so the idea there is that you're using data and statistical analysis to drive process improvements. There's lean business. The idea there is to minimize waste through maximum return on minimal input. So you have both the input and output that you can kind of impact. And so you're trying to maximize one while minimizing the other. And Kaizen has been around for a while, and this is the idea of continual process improvement. And so many organizations and many customers that we have currently have been putting a lot of focus on these concepts recently. And in fact, there's a lot of organizational initiatives, I would say, broadly speaking, that are dedicated to these efforts. And so as a result, test spending is getting a lot of scrutiny because it's a large expenditure for a lot of companies that have test assets. Additionally, newer companies have shown that there are ways to derive return and generating cash without owning assets. So this would be, a couple of examples there would be Uber. Obviously, they don't own the cars, and Airbnb, they don't own the rental properties, but they get a return from those assets. And so that's a very attractive proposition for people who have test assets that are quite expensive. And as I'm sure that everybody who's attending this webinar is aware, costs are increasing in day-to-day life, but also specifically in the test and measurement industry. So you've probably seen that an oscilloscope that costs a certain amount last year costs a lot more this year. And finally, this all continues to happen with increasing pressure to be faster and timely to the marketplace. So those are kind of macro trends that are going on in the industry that are, kind of causing more scrutiny on test expenses. There's also individual equipment problems that is basically these challenges get more difficult to address every year because they compound on one another, right? And so there's poor utilization and therefore poor return on expensive assets. There's inefficient buying processes that yield duplicate equipment within organizations. There's inefficient processes to manage and locate equipment that hobble both engineering and R&D, and a lack of space in some cases where there's too many assets taking up valuable square footage because there's no organized disposal policy. And so many companies are turning to asset optimization. And so that's the first time I've mentioned that term. We're going to get there and understand what asset optimization is. Asset optimization can be a source of competitive advantage. The top line benefits are absolutely massive and probably why you're attending today. The savings of an asset optimization program can yield 10 to 25% on annual test costs. You can operate more efficiently. and drive a higher return on test investment. So that's kind of the top line benefits, but they all trickle down to individual groups within the organization. Engineers get access to more equipment and have it when it's needed. Managers can project cost of test and testing gaps, and they can unlock capital that's tied up in underutilized equipment. The finance team and executive leadership love the CapEx savings that comes along with asset optimization. They love OpEx savings, improved cash flow, and higher returns on net investments. The procurement team can make more informed purchasing decisions with an asset optimization system in place, and they have information on what's already in the asset pool. So the why of asset optimization is immensely compelling, but that leaves the question, what is asset optimization? So asset optimization is a set of practices and an approach that builds upon basic asset management. And so when we talk about basic asset management, we mean, what test assets do I own and where are they? There may be more complex identifying information than just those two things. There might be cal due dates, option mixes on the equipment themselves, serial numbers, etc. But by also understanding where assets are being used and how they're being used, then you can derive better business intelligence that helps engage asset optimization. And asset optimization is taking the asset pool and right sizing it, both in terms of the actual size of the pool, but the equipment, the make of the pool. So it's simple. It's a simple concept. And so with asset optimization, we're talking about 25% annual cost savings. Where do those cost savings come from? So an independent third-party firm performed a study and basically found that there are 5 key areas of fiscal benefits that are realized from asset optimization. There is the unlocking of capital through the disposal of redundant equipment. There's reduced cost of ownership by better deploying and more tightly managing rentals. This is in line with the idea of, we talked earlier about paying for the use of the asset, not the asset itself. There's a reduced overall test need by driving optimization of owned equipment higher. You buy and rent less going forward. That's a big capital and operational expense savings. There's enhanced equipment purchasing and disposal, so disposing of the equipment when it actually has more residual value, and not buying equipment that you don't need that you can share, that results in cost savings. And then finally, there's improved efficiency, so you can do more basically with the same level of overhead and resources. And so all of this adds up to about 25% of cost savings annually. So this sounds really great, right? How do we get there? So in asset optimization, there's basically 2 steps. There's 2 main steps. The first is a house cleaning, and the second is an optimization process. In the first step, it's necessary to completely audit the asset pool and capture it in a database that includes the relevant defining characteristics in a uniform manner. And that's really important, that it be in a uniform manner so you can really compare apples to apples. This includes, things like serial number, option mixes, calibration dates, etc. And from this process, there should be some easily identifiable unused equipment. And so this is often a mix of equipment that has no residual value and probably needs to be scrapped and is taking up space, and some equipment with some residual value that can be resold for a profit. The second step in the process is where the optimization part starts. And so equipment users will start sharing a pool of equipment to which they all have access across the organization, and this leads to higher efficiencies. By understanding upcoming test requirements and needs, procurement processes and practices can be enhanced to prevent excess purchases going forward. And then finally, there's this iterative kind of bootstrap process where we are selling underutilized assets until the pool reaches the right size and makeup, and then continuing to resell assets in order to keep the pool at the right size and keep it efficient. So that's basic asset optimization 101. Let's talk about electro-rent strategies for getting and implementing that process. So first of all, why should you listen to ElectroRent? Well, for one thing, this is what we do. This is our core competency. Uh, this is our core operational competency that we do that keeps us profitable. So we manage the world's largest test equipment asset pool, and we manage it all across the globe, and we do it very efficiently. And so our secret sauce, or the thing that we're really good at, is making sure that our rental pool has the right makeup and is at the right size to keep us profitable. And so what we intend to do with our 50 years of experience doing this is we help our customers access that core competency through we help customers leverage our expertise through a three-legged stool of basic services, software, and support that we can pull from standard service offerings to create a custom solution for our customers. And so we have 6 basic strategies under which ElectroRent is uniquely suited to help our customers implement through these offerings. And so we're going to walk through 6 of those six offerings right now, or those 6 strategies right now. So the first one has to do with rigorous asset inventory. And this is something that we are uniquely skilled at. We can go in and help customers get started with asset management through the deployment of our skilled asset audit team. They come in and provide an asset inventory that tells our customers exactly what they've got in the asset pool. And so since we are so skilled at this and we have our own tools to do this, we're usually faster than customers can do this in-house, and we are frequently less expensive. It takes less time and less resource dedication for us to do that. So this is step 1, is performing a rigorous asset inventory. And just from understanding what you've got in inventory, you can start to realize some cost savings through the low-hanging fruit that we talked about. Strategy number 2 is to implement a tracking technology to locate all of your equipment. Okay, and so strong asset management practices really require an understanding of where your equipment is located, and this is oftentimes the most difficult challenge, right? Because it requires somebody that is going to keep the database up to base all the time, and it's usually a manual process. It's time consuming and it's tedious, and so as a result, it oftentimes doesn't get updated. We at ElectroRent provide multiple automated tracking technologies that take the manual process out of it. And this is true regardless of whether your equipment is located in the lab or the field. And so we offer really 3 different solutions that I would say are fairly differentiated. I'm going to talk about the first 2 right now. We'll talk about the next one when we talk about the next strategy. So the first 2 that we're going to talk about right now are our IoT, Internet of Things tracking setup. And the way that this works is we have IoT trackers that we attach to either assets or the carrying cases for which these assets are going out into the field. We don't track anything in the depot. What we do is we go into the system and geofence around all of the different warehouses, and that enables us to automatically update asset status when the asset leaves the warehouse. We can change it to deployed in the field, and we can use deployment as a proxy for utilization. So we talked about utilization in the past. This is how we get that data for field equipment. We can optionally also track vans, trucks, or trailers that are used to transport this equipment, and that also enables us to automatically reassign equipment to particular individuals or particular trucks within the system if they are co-located with that van when they are outside of the warehouse. We then use our trackers then use kind of a 3-pronged locational approach. They can talk to GPS satellites, identify location based upon which cell tower it's connected to, or also get location from Wi-Fi hotspots without connecting to them to provide real-time location of the assets. And then we take all of that location data and synthesize it in our software for tracking, and we take that location information and translate it into usable data. So for example, we take that utilization data and tell you which equipment might be a candidate for disposal. We can alert drivers if they need to recover assets from job sites. We can help you allocate assets to individual projects and programs based upon location and reroute it while it's in the field. So that's one tracking solution that we use for equipment that's in the field. Oftentimes, however, the resolution of this is about 5 meters, about 15 feet. So that's insufficient usually for our customers who are using equipment in a lab. So we have a Bluetooth low energy tracking architecture that we deploy in our customers. And the way that this works is we have these small tags that are about 1 inch in diameter. We put those on the lab assets and then install readers into oftentimes the ceiling of our customers' labs. And so with this proprietary system that uses both the signal strength of the tag and the angle of the signal approach and triangulation, we can identify the location of equipment within a lab real time with no input from any sort of manual system to about 2 to 3 feet, right? So this is about 1 meter location accuracy. And so in this way, we can map your lab and then automatically show you on a map in an automated fashion where that equipment is located down to the bench level. So that's strategy number 2, understanding where equipment is located, and that has massive benefits for efficiencies. Strategy number 3 has to do with employing effective software tools to do your asset management. And so most times, a lot of companies will use non-dedicated software, or that's general asset management software for their test assets, or they'll use spreadsheets. And spreadsheets have the advantage of being free and they're very flexible, but you've got to build all the tools in yourself. Asset management software that is non-dedicated for test doesn't have the unique features that anybody who has managed a pool of test assets will tell you is really quite critical. And so the unique software tools that some examples of the unique software tools that we have in our system are things like parameter search. And so what this enables engineers to do is search for, let's say, for example, an oscilloscope that has a certain bandwidth, rather than knowing the the model number and option mix that's required to gain that bandwidth. The engineer can simply search for that parameter, and that will return a list of oscilloscopes in inventory that meets that parameter definition. And we can even do multi-parameter search. So we can spread that across several dimensions and find exactly the piece of equipment we need without knowing the software or the model number or option mix that's required. We can also implement calibration workflow management, or really any sort of workflow management that has to do with your test assets, and we can do drag and drop assignments. Strategy number 4 is really the critical one, and that is monitoring and measuring utilization. And so by driving higher utilization, we get a pool of equipment that is generating more of a return, and enables us to right size the asset pool. And so we enable our customers to do both intended utilization, and that is the basic concept is, how do I intend to use my equipment, or how often do I intend to use my equipment? And there's also actual utilization. And so this is where Electrorent is quite different and quite unique. So we have an automated utilization data collection tool, and how it works is it sits on either a server or a bench PC within your network, and it will talk to the equipment via any connection that the equipment supports. So this would be GPIB, USB PXI, VXI, and LAN. And we even have a way with wireless equipment, or with Windows equipment, to do this wirelessly. We then go out, and there's some rudimentary intelligence in the software tool to identify what type of equipment we're talking to, and then ask it specific questions about what it's doing to identify whether or not it's in use or not. We then aggregate that utilization information into our software again and provide insights that are quite unique. So we can not only tell you by the model number and by the product category, what type of utilization you're seeing. We can do it by bench, we can do it by particular asset, and really tell you, give a comprehensive picture of how your asset pool is being utilized. You can then use this information to decide which equipments or which assets are candidates for disposal and which need to be kept, and maybe which equipment that you might need to purchase more of based upon upcoming test demand, or share within your organization, or perhaps rent more. And so this is just a quick view of what their automated rent, share, and disposal analytics look like based upon that utilization data. Strategy number 5 is you got to have a good program to dispose of and recoup and unlock the capital that's tied up in test assets. And furthermore, disposing the equipment at the right time in the product life cycle maximizes the return that you get back. Electrorent is unique here because we really understand, as the world's largest reseller of pre-owned equipment, we understand in the test industry, we understand the secondary market and can help provide our customers with guidance on which unused equipment has residual value, and actually which equipment is at the right time in the product life cycle to be sold to maximize the return. We also have the capability to then dispose of equipment for our customers by taking it into our warehouse, reconditioning it, and testing it, and then reselling it through our worldwide network of buyers. And we have multiple sales channels to dispose of this equipment and then return, the capital and money back to our customers. Finally, our last strategy here that I want to discuss that makes Electrorent unique to help with is outsourced asset pool management. And so this is basically where we do asset pool management for our customers. The way that works is we take the equipment into our warehouse and put it in its own dedicated area that is dedicated to our customers' owned equipment. We then will be able to go through and process orders for that equipment that come from that customer only, and send it and receive it and do both order fulfillment, return management. We also handle all the calibration and repairs, and we also provide advice on which equipment is being utilized, not utilized, and which equipment might be candidates for disposal, which we then perform in-house. And so this whole idea is similar to what we talked about with the asset audit. We're very skilled at this, and this leverages a unique set of core competencies that we have so that we can do this oftentimes better, more efficiently, but most importantly, more inexpensively than customers can do in-house, because it's oftentimes not a core competency for these customers. So those are the 6 strategies that we have for asset optimization that helps our customers reduce their test costs by up to 25%. And so that's all I have right now. I think we may have some questions. Is that accurate, Steve?
Yes, I did ask the audience for some questions. We got one here. Let me just paraphrase it a little bit. It's not really that complex. Does Electrorent only track and manage equipment obtained through Electrorent?
That's a really great question. The answer is no. So our software or our services are really intended to be used by our customers for equipment that they obtain anywhere. I would say the one kind of nuance there is that we, in our system, enable our customers to manage both rented assets and owned assets in the same database. If the equipment is rented from Electrorent, we can do that. We can put it in the database in an automated fashion, and we can also do things like track that equipment locationally within the system in an automated fashion. Whereas if it's being rented from somewhere else, that is, something that has to be done manually.
Okay. Before we get to the other questions here, I just wanted to mention that we have put the copies of the slides into the handout section of the webinar here while we wait for another question. So I'm just curious, Chris, I know that one thing that the manufacturers have been doing is going to more license-based features for the equipment. Is that trend really helping the asset optimization numbers here? Is that something that you've tracked a little bit?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure I have a really good answer for you. I am familiar with that trend. I think part of the issue with that is, with the more license-based features, it becomes really important to understand the exact option mix that's on a particular asset to
Right,
make it suitable for a particular test. So, in that way, really being, going back to what I mentioned earlier about having a uniform set of data that is comprehensive, that contains all of the relevant information, becomes really important. And so oftentimes what we'll see is that asset management software solutions that are more generic don't have a good way to capture that relevant information. And if you do it, for example, in a spreadsheet, you can set up its own column, but it's really difficult within that system to keep that data integrity, to keep that listing uniform. And so with our software being set up specifically for test assets, we keep track of that information very comprehensively, and can, with our multi-parameter search, enable customers not to need to know that a specific option is required to achieve a certain, let's say, measurement specification.
right,
It just is translated in the software by itself.
right. Okay, that's good. We do have another question here. This one is about the tracking program. Uh, is is there a capability to use a different software tracking program, or do we have to use the one that Electroret provides?
That's a good question too. I think, I want to be really careful about how I answer this question because the word tracking is involved. So for asset management, the answer is absolutely 100% yes. We've done multiple engagements with customers where we provide some of our services, and in fact, we can provide most of our services, such as asset audit and asset disposal, that is, used with other software, right? We can link also our software to the customer's ERP, for example, and track information such as the book value of assets if that's already stored in a financial portion of the ERP. And that's helpful for understanding, equipment disposal timelines and things of that nature. But because the word tracking is used, I want to be very careful to mention that, some of the features that we've implemented in our Leo software, such as, asset location tracking or the
Right,
automated utilization measurement, that's not compatible with outside software.
got it. Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in, so I think we're at the end. Chris, this is actually very interesting because it's so covered so in depth. So I appreciate that. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it.
All right, and then with that, I think we'll end the webinar. And thank you for all the attendees for coming, and hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. Bye.